welcome to Rules of the Game podcast. My name is Butch Porter. I'm your illustrious host, and with me is the beautiful and talented one and only Jessica Hausberger from the great state of Tennessee. How you doing, Jessica?
I'm well, Butch. Good morning. How are you today?
I can't complain. I'm blessed. It's a beautiful day here. Is it nice there?
Yes, we had a lot of fog this morning, but it's going to be just a nice, mild 72 degrees today. I've got the top off my Jeep and, hanging on to these last days of summer.
Yes. Really? You still have summer? No, it's fall is definitely falling here. So congratulations in getting to the second round of our contest for the
Oh, yeah.
co-host of Rules of the Game podcast. So, are you
I'm
excited?
stoked. I mean, they've
Yeah.
revealed what the base salary is. And
I mean,
I'm just bringing everything I have to the situation. The compensation is it's very
it's
tempting.
it is. No, it's fascinating. Like it's amazing, really, when you think about it.
I heard I get a chipped mug if I make it to round 7.
That's correct. You get a matched Virtus Tentamine Godet mug if you stick around for round 3. Well, look, I will tell you that that we're excited to have you today. I think the topic of the day is democracy. We've been reading Aristotle in our readings for the great books through the arts or great ideas through the arts, and we also have a lot of discussions in the modern day about voter suppression and voter fraud, and we have mail-in ballots and all those things going on. And there's an article written by a certain Jessica coming up on the Great Conversations website soon about this topic. So I figured we should talk about it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Should we talk about voter fraud? Let's start with voter fraud, right? Do you think that?
Okay, yeah, I don't know much about voter fraud.
Oh, we shouldn't talk about things we don't know much about then, right? Or should we?
No, I think we should.
We should, absolutely. No, you're right.
We could.
We absolutely should.
Yeah.
We absolutely should. So, so part of the issue we have going right now, and I want to work my way backwards to who's voting and who's not, et cetera, because I know you have a lot of thoughts on that. But from a mail-in ballot standpoint, do you think that mail-in ballots as a primary form of balloting is bad, good, indifferent? Does it matter?
I think in a modern society, we should be prepared to do mail-in ballots. We have with the military for many years, and there's a lot of different situations where several states have done it successfully. I think, President Trump mentioned in the debates kind of a little bit of a nuance between the type of mail-in ballot where a citizen sort of decides that they want to vote, they get their hands on the correct type of ballot, and they mail it into their state. Now,
Okay.
but Trump had mentioned that there's a certain type of ballot out there where they're basically sending them out. Maybe you can speak to this because I'm really unclear, where they're really more like eliciting votes, and maybe that there would be more room for error in this type of vote eliciting.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
yeah. If you're mailing out a ballot to everyone, then the difference, the difference that he mentioned was if someone requests a ballot, that's perfectly fine, because if you only get one if you request it, then there's a disadvantage in that it takes more time. You have to wait and get it, so you have to do it well ahead of time, before election day or whatever. But his problem would be similar to mine, which is if everybody's getting one mailed to them, including dead people and two to the same person, and blah blah blah, then that can cause problems. I mean, I've always been a fan of Congress voting remotely. Like I'm a big fan of that. And I think because there's only so many of them and all that. So I know that the modern technology grants us some opportunities, but I'm concerned about the soliciting of votes. I'm concerned about the harvesting of votes, if you will, and we had, people
Sure.
get arrested for that here in Virginia not too long ago.
Sure.
And so
I mean, voting is a privilege, and if voting moves from a privilege to a political maneuver by a specific party, then we really jeopardize, the integrity of our vote. And right now, it's really not a question of, which party is, good or bad, but the Democrat Party is more incentivized to elicit a larger voting base, because I mean they have a larger voting base in the general public, whereas the Republicans have, more voters who are willing to show up. So the Democrat Party is just more incentivized to say, hey, let's try to get as many people to vote as possible who normally wouldn't.
Right, that's true. I mean, I remember, and I'm all about, everybody voting, but I remember when they changed the voting day for our town elections here in my town.
You're for everybody voting?
Yeah, everyone. Yeah, everyone. Yeah. But no, the here in Leesburg, my hometown, that we used to have our town elections, like town council and mayor elections, on in May of the even years is when we had our elections. So the turnout for that was roughly 8 to 10%, somewhere in that range, 10-12% on a good year, because no one knew what's happening in the town. And so only the people who really knew, I mean, we're close to DC, and so everybody is a lot of commuters, and people don't realize what's going on in their town. And all politics is national in Loudoun County. And so, but at some point, one of my friends in the town council got it in his head that we need to move it to November. And I'm like, please don't, because then you got a bunch of people voting in town who have no idea what's going on in town. So if you just look at it, and we have a very high voting percentage on presidential years here, like 70-80% or whatever. Yeah. It's a highly educated area. So that differential between 60%, between 60 to 70% and 10 or 15% is huge. And my assumption is that at least half of those new people voting in the town elections really don't know what's going on in the town elections. And so they're not following it, whereas before only the people who were really paying attention to the town and the town government were actually voting in it. Right. And so that's why the numbers were low. Yeah. So I'm not sure which one of those is better. My hunch is the former. My hunch is that a lower voter turnout based on those who are actually paying attention and those who care and those who are engaged is kind of better. It's not like anybody was told they couldn't vote, right? But they just weren't, because they weren't paying attention in May, So, I mean, it's still a small town. It's 50,000 people, whatever. It's not always been that. It's bigger now than it was. I mean, at the time, it was probably more like 35 or 40,000 when we started changing those things. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess my problem is I don't want people voting who don't know what they're voting for, ideally, right?
Right.
So I don't know how you change that, though. I'm not for restricting them from voting, but I would rather them not vote if they don't know, right? If they don't know why they're voting, or they're only voting because someone, sent them a ballot and right. told them, or drop by their house and help them fill it out, whatever. I mean, I think that's that can be a problem, right? I mean, I think that's a challenge, right?
I agree. Know. I think that there are natural hurdles to the voting process, and it's not just as simple as I don't have a ride to the voting location. I think the natural hurdles there are knowing when the voting is, caring enough to educate yourself on who is running for different positions, what some of the issues are, and then planning and being responsible enough to be able to show up somewhere and cast your vote in a way that is at least minimally informed. I myself have been in a situation where I've been in a voting booth before, and I was like, ooh, I didn't take a look at what was going to be up on this well enough, and I'm looking at two judges or two people running that I have no
Sure.
idea who either one is. And so I just vote for the woman. I kid. Sometimes I don't even have to vote.
I've actually talked to people at the polls, and that's what they do. They vote for all the women.
I
It's a
mean,
thing.
so we've all been there. And, as you know, I'm somebody who's really
I
interested
always
in
vote for the
politics.
man. If it's between a man and a woman, I just assume the
Well,
man is going to
we're
be
canceling each other
right.
out. So, I kind of
Aren't there
like the
more of
way
you voting? Aren't there more women voting now? Is that true or is that not true?
I mean,
I
there's
can't
more
remember.
women going to college, so I wouldn't be surprised if there was more women
Yeah,
voting. But
that's kind of why I'm
speaking of
assuming that. I don't
college,
know.
it's interesting, when we make things too accessible, it starts to lose its identification as a privilege. And it just starts to, or even it starts to become watered down. And college has kind of been like that. We won't talk about that
Sure.
too much, but if we make voting too accessible and we remove all of those natural hurdles, then then it does become for everyone, even people who really aren't even all that interested. Oh, well, they're, sure, I'll just go ahead and vote. I don't have any passion about it. It's not my
Sure.
thing. I don't know anything about the candidates. I don't know anything about Aristotle or Plato or the history of government or what kind of country I live in. But
Sure.
sure, yeah, I'll cast a vote. We have to be careful because there are countries in this world where everybody does vote. And those countries are called dictatorships.
Yeah, no, that's the problem I've always had. And speaking of Aristotle, we're reading Aristotle now as part of our, great ideas through the arts, if you will, and watching a movie called The Year of Living Dangerously, where but basically the focus is on journalists in Indonesia during the 60s, and so what it means to be a citizen is the kind of a first foundational question. But and I want to get to that. But the issue is that if you, to your point, if you take voting as everybody has to do it, which is kind of the attitude that we get sometimes from some corners of the polity or electorate, is that everybody needs to vote, everybody needs to vote, everybody needs to vote. And I think that sounds great on the surface, but it does cheapen it in a way. Like if people who don't give a flip vote, then you have to wonder, or they don't know anything, or how, or they vote based on bumper stickers or whatever. Then yeah, I mean, I think that can cause challenges. I wouldn't restrict them from voting. I think that would be
And the
irrational.
Democrats are going to win.
Right. I don't care. I don't care which side wins. The point is that if the vote is, I mean, I do care, but if the vote is based on things that, on things that aren't true, or things that don't follow, or things that don't make sense, or, or just kind of surface ideas, then I think I would rather restrict the vote in some shape or form, or at least have less people vote if a higher percentage of the people voting are people who understood what was going on. I don't, again, I'm not for restricting the vote in any way. I just think that I think we put a lot of emphasis on voting. It doesn't matter who you vote for, just go vote. Like, I mean, that's really the attitude. And whoever has the best get out the vote routine or whatever is gonna.
As if the full extent of franchisement is just going in there and pressing the button. Being somebody who has the right to vote, we've all been told at some point in our life, and now we're passing it along to the next generation, that along with privilege comes responsibility. There is no such thing as a privilege without the responsibility. And so all these celebrities who come on and they're like, go and press the button. Just go and press the button. That's just the privilege part. I don't understand why aren't they coming on and saying, here are some things that you can do, to shoulder the responsibility of casting a vote for the next leader of the free world. These are some of the things that you can do to prepare to do that. Because if you ignite the core passions of people and help connect them to the purpose of voting, then they themselves will go out and vote. But just by saying, go vote, but stripping them of any passion or purpose or, desire to really dig into the responsibility of that cheapens the process on so many levels. And if we cheapen the process by which we elect all of our government officials, then we will cheapen other processes within our government as well and water it all down.
Yeah, I think that's true. I do think that cheapening the vote is a problem. I don't know that. I mean, obviously, I don't believe, and I don't want anybody to get the impression that I believe that disenfranchising any voters is an answer. I do think that some of the get out the vote rhetoric involves educate yourself or get to know why understand why you're voting, et cetera. I don't think all of it is completely mindless, but but you're right. The only countries in the world that require everyone to vote are the ones that are dictatorships and tyrannies. And so that should tell you a little bit about what the absolute everyone has to vote approach might get you to. But they always seem to vote for the same people. It's 99%. Voting for the Communist Party or whatever it is. If it's that kind of regime. Now, one of the cool things about the Aristotle reading is that he cites some Greek city-states that voted by lottery, or by lot is what he calls it. And so basically, you have not everybody was franchise in those city-states. It was property owners, it was only men, it was probably had to serve in the military or whatever it was, whatever the criteria was. It was a narrower, is well under the percentage of the population that's qualified to vote in a modern democracy. But they just randomly chose people from the voting, from the citizenry, who were able to vote, who would serve in offices, whether legislative or executive. And so and it does remind me, William F. Buckley said he would rather pick 10 random people from the Brooklyn phone book or whatever to govern him than he would these people graduating from Harvard and Yale that are governing us now. So I don't know. I mean, do you think it's not feasible, but what kind of difference would it make? Like if you were, we have jury duty, right? So we have jury duty. I just filled out a jury duty thing yesterday. I've never served on a jury. Have you?
No, I have been invited to do so when I was younger, but just had too many responsibilities and couldn't cut it. So no, I never have. I'd love to.
Yeah, I've never had a chance to either, but we do have things like that. We're kind of randomly chosen for jury duty, right? So what would it be like if we were randomly chosen to be a congressman? Maybe not a senator or a president, right? Maybe the bar is higher, but for a congressman, how hard can it be, right? Seriously. So if we randomly chose 435 people from all of these districts, how would that change our government? Would that be a positive, a negative? Would it be chaos and madness? What would that look like?
Yeah, probably a little bit of both. Definitely chaos and madness, but how would that be any different than now? I don't isn't that pretty much what we're doing?
Well,
we
that's
are
true.
Randomly choosing 435 people to chaotically run our country.
Well, at least run the pocketbook.
How is it different again?
Well, I think another way to look at it is to go down to a smaller scale. Like if we did that kind of randomness, if we chose citizens at random to run my town, I don't think it would be, my hunch is it would not be any worse. That's just my guess. I'm betting, but I don't know. My hunch is it might not be any worse. So, and if you look at a New England town, it's very, very small New England towns. It's kind of like that. It's not random, but pretty much just normal everyday people step up and they have a term, and it's a duty and a responsibility, and it's service as part of its public service. I don't think the federal government has been approached that way in a long, long time, because there's a bunch of money involved in it, and there's power involved in it, and I think, obviously my solution is to get the federal government out of doing things it shouldn't be doing. But, so there's that. And so if they have less power, there's less at stake, and there's less money involved. But
100%, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but let's just look at, what town do you live? Are you in Nashville? I can't remember where you are.
We live about 15 to 20 minutes north of Nashville in a really great little bedroom community called Hendersonville, Tennessee.
Oh, yeah,
We're
Hendersonville.
not much bigger than Loudon. We're closer to 60,000 people at this point. It's really people are moving here in droves, so we are growing. Sure. But it's still got a real small town feel to it. It's kind of like, we've got the campaigns coming up, and we've got our mayoral campaigns coming up, and I know both of the people running for, I know the current mayor and the woman who is challenging him. And, I sit with her in Sunday school, and he's my age and kind of a friend in the community. And, so it's a smaller feel, in that regard, sure. Even though.
Yeah. But you're voting for the woman because, she's a woman, right? Is that?
I don't know. Honestly, this one's a tough one for me. I'm torn on this one. Yeah. I am, because I like both of them. He's done a great job, and she would do a great job, so, whatever. Wouldn't it be great if that was the issue we were having on the federal level? Either way would be great.
That would be shocking. Absolutely shocking. But I think it helps us. The cool thing about Plato and Aristotle is they're always talking about cities, right? They think in terms of cities. I don't think they, they never really talked in terms of empires, right? So what we're talking about with a country the size of the United States is roughly what an empire would have been, as far as number of people and vast, amount of diversity and geography, et cetera, et cetera. I think the federal government is just, it's a hard thing to pin down philosophically as a right way to govern, because it's so vast, there's so much money, there's so many people, and spread out. And but I think if we think of these things in terms of local elections, I think it helps us clarify a little more. So what's do you guys vote for mayor at the same time as president?
Yes.
Okay. So do you know what like the turnout is like? Like how many people turn out for presidential elections there? Is it 50% or 30 or 90 or what?
I would guess that we're higher than average. I want to say 60% is the national average. I'd put us 70%, but I don't think we're off the charts like you guys are over there. Yeah, but I don't know. I'd have to look it up.
Are you guys voting for state delegates and state senate and all that kind of stuff too, all at the same time?
Yes, we typically do. We just wipe it all out. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of times I'm just like, who are these people? I wasn't prepared for this.
Wasn't prepared for this. I was watching the presidential debates.
Oh, see, they're already trying to drop stuff off to me. See, I got my little door hanger for like, nice. I've known this guy forever. I'm like, okay, yeah, you got my vote, whatever.
Well, in Virginia, every year is an election year. So our state and county elections are in the odd years, and we're one of the few states that elect our state governments on the odd years. So it does change things. The voter turnout is lower, but it's not as low as it probably would be in especially here locally where I am, because it's it's a fairly affluent place. So I don't know though. I think if we're backing up and we're saying, what does it mean to be a citizen? I've had, liberal friends of mine tell me that, we should require some sort of service, for 2 years, right? It doesn't have to be military service, but even if it's AmeriCorps or Peace Corps or something like that, like everybody should get out there and experience different places and meet different kinds of people and have some sort of understanding of how their country works for a couple of years um, before they before they become a citizen, before they're allowed to vote, I guess is what that would mean. I'm not quite sure that's a great idea, um, because I think it I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I've had some more authoritarian style conservatives suggest the same thing. You know
Right.
me, I tend to be a little bit more libertarian. I'm like, government forced me to do what?
What?
But yeah, I've definitely heard. I mean, sometimes, if the ends justify the means for some people, then I think there could definitely be some benefit to more people serving our country in the military or in a AmeriCorps type of style. Yeah, I think it would have some great outcomes. Do I think people should be forced to do it? I mean, you're not going to see me pulling the lever for that issue in the yes direction. No. But, would it be a bad thing for our society? No, I think that if we, through private organizations and through, the passion of people locally and statewide and maybe at a federal level, wanted to go in that direction and started to implement it in more of a privatized way, I think it would be great. But the government just saying, hey, everybody has to give 2 years of service here or there, whew, I don't know. Germany does it and they say it's great, you know?
Yeah, Israel does it.
Oh, well then. Israel does a lot of things.
That's right. Well, that's true,
Like,
but just because somebody else doesn't mean we should. I'm a big believer that we can learn from other countries without, it's like I remember when that book from uh, what was the president of France came out, Testimony, I think it was. Can't remember the guy's name. It's not coming to me anyway. But there was some really cool things in there, and but it told me that there are certain things we can learn from Europe, but employment law is not one of them. Like that's not one of the things that we should be learning from Europe. But yeah, I think the problem that we have is most likely a problem of education, right? I mean, if everybody who was voting we knew had some semblance of education. I mean, my problem with the requirement is not from a libertarian angle. I'm not a libertarian. I don't play one on television, but I will say that although the requirement obviously makes me nervous, it's not. The issue is that it discounts other types of experiences, right? In other words, if somebody started a business right out of high school and didn't go to college and didn't go to AmeriCorps or the military or whatever, then I think they're automatically learning some things about how the world works, and they're engaging in the community. They're having to get suppliers and and customers and stakeholders in the community, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's as noble and as helpful of an endeavor as going off to the Peace Corps or serving in the military for a couple of years, especially if it's serving in the
yeah,
military
I
for the
will say
purpose of
this,
getting.
but
Yeah.
sorry, I know we've got a little bit of delay here, but if I can interject
No, go
that,
ahead.
with the immoral practice that our government is currently engaged in, which is handing out, government loans to anybody who wants to go to college, if we're going to compare that practice to the government saying, if you serve in the United States military for 2 years or AmeriCorps for 2 years, we will pay for your college education. Well, sign me up. I'd rather shift to that,
Right.
so that
But
people don't
but
think
in
that
order.
college is a right that they have.
Yeah, no, that's perfectly fine. I think that's a better attachment than attaching the right to vote to it, though, right? Because what we're talking about is not forcing people to be to serve in the military or be in the Corps. We're talking about attaching that to the right to vote. In other words, you can't vote unless you have, etc. So people would still. I'm assuming it's probably not true in some of those states that require military. I mean, I don't know if in Israel you can say you can say, well, I'm not going to serve in the military. I'm just not going to vote for the rest of my life. I mean, that's probably not true. But that's when we're talking about it theoretically, we're talking about attaching it to the right to vote. So you would just be like a felon for the rest of your life.
I don't really
that's
like
all.
that.
Yeah, me neither. I mean, I'm not a fan. But that's what but no, but the reason
right.
is
the
reason
ways to accomplish that.
I think there are better ways, but it is something that keeps coming up, and so I figured it was something to ponder. But the random selection of people to run the House of Representatives, you're not a fan of that, just like just like a lottery.
Well, yeah, Butch, it's kind of like you had said earlier, so eloquently. You had touched on the fact that when things are done on a local level, there's less money, so there's less room for corruption. So by the time you take things to a federal level and you're collecting trillions of dollars, well, at least spending trillions of dollars, maybe collecting trillions, I don't know, doesn't seem to add up. There's just so much room for corruption that we see some problems with representative government.
Sure.
Because we're all we could all be tempted by that level of corruption. That's why as a conservative, for me, one of the biggest pulls of being a conservative is that focus on a more local level of politics and that resistance to federal power. And one of the things that alarms me most about the Democratic Party is their willingness to want to put power into the hands of the federal government. And at that point in time, honestly, it doesn't matter how people get into these positions, if they're elected or if it's through a lottery or appointed. If you are up against big corporations and most people are going to succumb to that.
Yeah, I think that part of the challenge is that many of the people who end up in Congress, who end up being corrupt, do get some practice on the local level. There are, and if you look at an average city government in the United States, there's especially a larger city with a lot of contractors and a lot of favors and public sector unions and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there's a severe amount of corruption in a lot of our cities. I'm sure that many of our counties, in more rural areas have some of the same kind of problems. I'm not sure. It's just not as much money. There's not as much people. But I'm sure that it's there. And so I think I wouldn't say that there's no corruption at the local level. And I know you're not saying that, but I think some of them do get practice. But I just think they're easier to reach. I think if you have corrupt officials at the local level, then it's easier to do something about it. It would seem, but I've never lived in a city that had well, no, I guess that's not true. I grew up in a city that was, quite corrupt. Shreveport, Louisiana is not a city void of corruption by any means. And most of us were powerless to do anything about it. So it does start there at the local level. I'm just not sure that, but the thing is, I think at the federal level, the campaigns are an order of magnitude more expensive, right? And everything is more expensive, and the budget
costs millions of dollars to purchase a Senate seat. I mean, that is really I mean, I think I researched it once, and I want to say that it costs about $22 million to what I say is purchase a Senate seat, because I mean, that's really what it takes. $22 million.
Yeah. So, but if you're picking people randomly, all that goes away. All that wasted money, all that energy, the mail outs and all that nonsense goes away, right? I'm actually a supporter of repealing the 17th Amendment. I think states should pick senators the way they used to. That's not a popular sentiment, but it's a popular sentiment with people like me who know what is true and just and right in the world. I'm just kidding. No, but I mean, I do think that it is a popular sentiment amongst.
Some of us don't even know what the 17th Amendment is, Butch. So
that's true. Well, the 17th Amendment means that is what made it so that senators, U.S. senators, were voted on by popular vote, statewide popular vote. And so before that, the state legislators and or governors would select U.S. senators. And if you ever watched, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, or no, not that one. What was it? Hang on, it's coming to me. The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, which was a movie we almost watched for our group. That's a senator who's being picked out of Utah, right? And I think it's Utah. Utah becomes a state, and he's a senator, Jimmy Stewart. So anyway, so it's they used to be picked that way. They used to be picked by state governments, which meant state governments had more power to influence federal policy, and so now they have almost none, right? And the federal government has more and more power because they keep giving more and more money back to states based on things that they want accomplished, whether education money or agriculture money or transportation money. All that stuff gets filtered through the federal bureaucracy first. So I, like you, think getting the federal government out of things is a good idea. I don't know that it solves the corruption problem, but it definitely can help. So, but no, so no lottery, right? So you don't think picking just for the U.S. House, you don't think it's, picking random citizens for the House would be, we're not going to do that. That's not going to float your boat.
I just think there's too many barriers to that. There's too many dumb people. I mean, somebody once said that the biggest argument against democracy is just, I can't remember the quote, but it was something to the effect of having a conversation with the average US citizen.
That's right. That we shouldn't. That's not nice. That's not nice.
Hey, I'm putting myself in there. I don't know if I could do that job. I didn't even know what the 17th Amendment was.
I don't know much about you, Jessica. Really, I don't. But I do know that if I were to put you in the U.S. House, if I could wave a wand and you would represent your district in the U.S. House, you would be okay. I think you would be. I think you would be as qualified as. I mean, look at your congressman from Tennessee now. How many do you have? Like 8 or 9? Something like that. However many you have, go research them. Go
that
watch.
Sounds about right, though. I think 8.
Yeah, go watch some of your speeches of your Congress critters and tell me if you're more qualified.
Yeah. I mean, I have less money than them. I'll tell you that.
Sure. Yeah, and you were able, and they were. Not all of them are rich. They're just able to raise money, right? That's the.
Well, a lot of them are rich though, because there's one of them that I know personally, and she's an incredible woman. But her, they are like mega millionaires, millionaires.
Yeah, I think a lot of them are. I mean, a lot of them, because in order to run, you have to know people with money and have access to money, and rich people know more rich people, and that's how that works, I guess. I wouldn't know. I have no idea, right? So yeah, it's not my. Those aren't the circles that I apparently run in. So, but
well, you've got to join Rotary Club, Butch.
Yeah, I'm actually a Rotarian now. It's actually, I did that recently.
Are you too?
Are you a Rotarian? It's nice. Well, we should know people with money now. I think that's the way it's supposed to work. The Rotarians, we're supposed to be running the country now. I think I just felt like it was one of those institutions that that the bourgeoisie is supposed to be involved in, and so I should, if I count myself such, I should join. Well, look, so I want to take a few minutes and talk about talk about the election coming up specifically. So, because you mentioned in your article, and you mentioned, just a few minutes ago, that, really Democrats, and it's usually true, if they show up, it's like a good football team. If they show up and play, then they'll win. But if they stay at home, they won't. So, do you think there's? The polls look great for Biden apparently at the moment. But do you think that Democrats are going to, have enough of a turnout with a, not the negative enthusiasm against Trump has to be stronger than the lack of enthusiasm for Biden, right? That's kind of what it boils down to.
So, there's just going to be so much going on election day, and we can't underestimate too how the pandemic is going to influence voters. I don't know if you've kind of made the same observation that I have, but my observation is that Republicans seem to be a little bit less concerned about showing up in line where no mask is required. In fact, some Republicans I know are excited to be able to show up in a line with no mask on. No, and some Democrats are very hesitant to put themselves in that situation, are going to be a lot more inclined for personal reasons or even for political reasons to do the mail-in ballot. It's kind of like a stubborn display of, this is the virtuous thing to do. I think that the morning after the election, there will not be a declared winner based on who showed up at the polls. I think we could see some strong numbers for Trump at that point. I really have no concept at this point, and haven't done the research, and maybe none of us really know at this point, what percentage of people will actually engage in the mail-in voting process. But based on that, we may not know for a week or so after the election who the declared winner is. I think the polls right now which is really significant. It's a significant lead. It's pretty solid. But I don't think that that's very well adjusted for who will likely show up. I would not be surprised at all if Trump won the election. But at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if Biden did either. Just kidding. I'll be surprised if Biden wins.
So you will be surprised if, looking at the polls, it looks like he's got it in the bag, right? So,
right.
So you don't believe that? You think that the turnout factor, given the pandemic, is going to be such that it would be harder for him to.
No, when I say I'm still surprised, it really has nothing to do with numbers or anything. I'm just shocked is the better word, that the best the Democrat Party could do, and I've got my pencil now, which means I'm serious. The best the Democrat Party could do was Vice President Joseph Biden. They had some decent people up there on stage, some people that even I liked. And they've actually elected Joe. This is the Progressive Party?
If you were the Democrat, if you were the Democrats, which one would you have picked?
That's a hard question. It's like, if you were a female, how would you do your hair today, Butch?
I'll tell you how I would do my hair, just like I'm doing now, because I can do my hair how I want.
Oh, okay. So you would still be Butch then.
That's right.
Well, there were some things that I liked about Andrew Yang.
Yeah, I liked Andrew Yang.
Think about issues that are on the forefront of the future, and think about solutions that you would like to implement, and how to make this world a better place, because that's what progressives do. I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm just saying that's what progressives do. Joe Biden is not a progressive. All these people who are like, either be conservative or be a progressive. What is Joe Biden? He's a filler.
Well, he is a filler. Did you see the article I posted on the Facebooks? Or maybe it was Twitter. I never can keep up anymore because I'm such a tweeter now. It was the
I can't
headline.
get on Twitter, man.
I know. The headline was Joe Biden is an idea. That was the headline. He's just an idea. He's a filler. He's like whatever you want him to be. That's what he is. But if he gets elected, do you think if he gets elected, do you think he stays president for more than 100 days?
I mean, I have no idea, but it's like I told my dad the other day. I said, look, Joe Biden is a conservative's dream candidate. He hasn't gotten anything done in 47 years, which is pretty much what a conservative prefers anyway. Joe Biden does not represent anything that you want. Kamala Harris, maybe. The best hope that they have is that Joe Biden gets elected, keels over the next day, and Kamala Harris is their president. That's what every real true progressive wants.
Probably, yeah. I mean, the cool thing about conservatives is that we're intellectually consistent. We don't want our conservative presidents and conservative politicians accomplishing anything either, right? So I mean, that's the cool thing. It's not like he's a dream because Biden is a dream because he's a Democrat that hasn't accomplished anything. We just really don't want our government doing anything. So that's a big
we want
fan.
Things dismantled or at a standstill.
That's right. Well, that's why my dream is always to have, one party in the White House, the other party, the opposing party, controlling Congress, and a 50-50, the House, and a 50-50 Senate. I mean, that's the dream.
Just constant gridlock.
Gridlock is good, baby. Gridlock is good. So look, I'm gonna let you go. I appreciate you coming on, and I think there's a good chance you'll make it to the final round. And
Butch, I'm really hoping and praying here. I kind of feel like I'm the Andrew Yang in this whole situation. It's like, are they gonna notice me? Are they gonna give me time to talk? Are they gonna realize that I'm the actual good candidate?
Right. I think we'll make sure that the listeners do get a chance to hear the real you. As long as you're not promoting universal basic income, I think you'll be fine.
Oh, UBI is a given for all of our listeners.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on, and go out there and have a wonderful day. And for those of you who are listening or watching, go have a great conversation, but play by the rules.